Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a potentially cold and snowy pattern for the later part of October and then going into early November. We're going to be going over who could be seeing the coldest temperatures as well as who could be seeing some potential snowfall threats. We already saw about 2 or 3 storms move through parts of the Midwest, parts of New England, as well as parts of the northern Rockies. We're going to be talking about all of that and kind of recapping those storms as well in today's video. So let's get right into it, and let's start off with your current National Weather Service page. We have red flag warnings in effect for parts of Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, and then some little parts of Kansas, Arkansas, and Kentucky. We also see some more red flag warnings also for Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas, as well as another little area for Utah and another area for Northern California. Wind advisories surrounding the red flag warnings in parts of the Central Plains and Midwest. We also see some more wind advisories for parts of Idaho and Montana. We see some high wind warnings for parts of northern Colorado and southeast Wyoming, as well as some air quality alerts for parts of Colorado and California. We also see those winter weather advisories up for portions of northern Minnesota and North Dakota, as well as parts of the northern Rockies and parts of northern Maine, where all these areas are pretty much seeing snowfall right now, and we'll actually talk about that in just one moment. Freeze watches are up for parts of Kansas, Nebraska, and Colorado, and frost advisories are up for parts of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, into Connecticut, Rhode Island, and eastern Massachusetts there. And other than that, there's nothing else going on in terms of watches and warnings, but you can tell it's very jam-packed in terms of those warnings and watches. Now, here is the radar loop over the past 18 hours of the precipitation and what type of precipitation it was. So whether it was rain, mixing precipitation, or snowfall, and it's showing you over the entire United States. So let's zoom in on 2 key areas that I want to point out. One area is the Midwest, where you saw that snowstorm that we talked about in yesterday's video. We did see a very heavy band of snowfall set up right around here, and I actually did forecast a band of snowfall, and my band was just to the north of where it actually set up. So I would say that's a pretty good forecast. I would give it probably a B or a B plus. And then if we look at New England and where its snowfall set up, first let's look at the total snowfalls from that. We actually saw a couple areas get up to 4 or 5 inches, and I again forecasted some areas getting isolated areas getting up to 4 or 5 inches in yesterday's video. And then here's the New England radar loop of this, and we saw a lot of snowfall really set up for parts of northern Maine and New Hampshire, as well as some icing precipitation set up right around here in Maine, where it started to transition over to rain, but it wasn't warm enough to do so. But other than that, you saw a lot of rain throughout much of the Northeast, where you guys got some soaking rain all over the Northeast. And then again, those areas further to the north actually switched over to some snowfall. And then here's your total snows from that. And we saw a couple areas report 7 or 8 inches of snowfall, especially in those higher elevated regions across New Hampshire and Maine. And something that really surprised me is how far west that actually got. We actually saw some decent amounts actually get into parts of Vermont and western New Hampshire, which kind of surprised me. Now, let's start talking about that potential cold air blast, and we're also going to be talking about how much snowfall you should be expecting with this cold air mass. Now, we're going to be really talking about this very cold air reaching all the way to the East Coast, probably right around the 25th, the 26th, or the 27th, but it will be interior, so probably over parts of the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley, westward of there into parts of the Great Lakes, the Midwest, and the Central Plains, probably by the 20th or so. So we're going to see a quick little blast. Here would be by Sunday morning. We're looking at some decent cold air into parts of the northern plains. That's not going to be our real threat. We do see some temporary cold air over parts of the East Coast, and that's not really going to stick around. It will be pushed out to the east. Here would be by October 19th, Monday. And by the way, we're looking at the European Ensemble model forecast for the temperature anomalies. And we're looking at some cold air for parts of the Midwest and the Great Lakes still. You are starting to see some warm air over here in the East Coast and parts of the Southeast. But this is really going to be a very temporary pattern. This cold air will go away for much of the Midwest, and that'll actually be replaced later on, probably, again, right around the 23rd, 24th, 25th, maybe even even beyond that. Now, here would be by the 20th, we're seeing another area of cold air up in Canada. This one is starting to depart, and we're starting to see ridging form across parts of the eastern United States. So that is actually going to be taking place, and you see by this frame, here would be by October 21st, Wednesday, and we're looking at a lot of that warm air setting up for the eastern United States, while that cold air will persist throughout parts of the north central United States, and that warm air only expands by the 22nd of October. But here we start to really look at some of that really cold air start to dip a little bit further to the south and to the east. Here would be by the 23rd of October, still very warm for parts of the eastern United States by this point, but we're looking at some cold air setting up through parts of the northwest and the midwest, and what that's going to do is kind of move further to the south and to the east over time. Now, here would be by Saturday, October 24th. We're looking at some cold air, still very cold air, over parts of the northern plains, northern Rockies, even parts of the northwest. And if we play this through, by the 25th is when it really starts to progress further to the south and to the east. That warm air is going away by that point, and we have very good agreement within most of the models that sometime between, I would say, the 24th and 28th, we'll see some sort of switch up in the pattern for the eastern half of the U.S. We're looking at that cold air over parts of the northern plains, and pretty much everywhere west of the Mississippi River is dealing with some sort of cold air for the most part. And then as we move this on to the 26th, you see that trough swinging further to the east, and this is what your trough shape would look like. You start to see some minor ridging that's trying to persist throughout parts of the eastern United States that would be overtaking this pattern, but it's not going to be allowed to really move forward, and it's really going to have to move out to the east because of this very cold air mass that's further to the west. And let's play this through. Here would be by the 27th. It's starting to reach parts of the east coast, but still parts of New England are in that warmer than normal area. But we're looking at that cold air really intensifying throughout parts of the central plains and parts of the Great Lakes and Midwest. Now, here would be by the 28th of October. It has reached pretty much the entire east coast by this point, and we're seeing cold air from everywhere east of the Rockies. So basically from the continental divide eastward, we're looking at some of that cold air, and we are looking at some minor ridging going on for parts of the southwest. So that's going to be kind of our pattern that we deal with in the mid to long range. Now, here would be by the 29th of October, and here would be by the 30th of October, and we're seeing pretty much the same pattern. That warm air is starting to really build in over the western United States, which is actually going to help solidify this pattern. When you see ridging, that usually doesn't go away as quickly as troughing does. So if you start to see ridging, that means that there has to be troughing somewhere, and it's usually anywhere to the east or to the west of the ridging. And in this case, since we're seeing the ridging over the western United States, and since ridging really likes to stick around for quite a while, you're most likely going to see this cold air mass stay around for a little bit because it has nowhere to go. You have ridging out to the east, you can barely see it in the central Atlantic, and you have some more ridging out to the west, so this cold air is now trapped over the eastern United States, and that's going to be our pattern that we're going to stick in over the next few weeks. Now, here would be the final frame by the 31st of October. Let's start talking about what the GFS Ensemble model wants to do. The European Ensemble model, that's a combination of 51 model members. The GFS model is the GFS Ensemble model is a combination of 31 different models. So we're giving two different perspectives of what's going on with this cold air mass. Now, again, this is the American Ensemble model. We're looking at that cold air setting up for parts of the Midwest. Again, that's our temporary cold air. We also see some more temporary cold air move through parts of the East Coast, but that's not going to be, again, our main cold air mass. What we're really going to be dealing with is going to be that cold air mass that sits up for parts of the northern and central Canada regions, and then it starts to dip further to the south, right around the 20th or so is when it really starts to move into the U.S. Now, here would be by the 19th of October. Here's the 20th, and we're starting to see that really cold air start to move out of Western Canada, and it's going to start to approach the Western United States, and then eventually it'll make its way into the Eastern United States. This cold air mass is moving out to the north and to the east, so we're not going to be having to deal with that anymore. And then as we start to get to the 21st of October, this is when we really start to get into the favorable pattern for cold air, and this is when the groundwork is really being laid. Now, we're seeing that ridging over the western United States, it does not reach parts of the Northwest and the extreme northern Rockies. So you will still see some troughing through there, but then you do have the groundwork for some troughing to move throughout parts of the eastern United States. And I would say over the next 2 weeks, the coldest area would probably be right in here, just because of how prolonged the cold air will be. Now, here would be by the 22nd, the 23rd, and here's the 24th. So we're starting to see that cold air really start to make a progression further to the south and to the east. We're seeing that ridging setting up actually a little bit further to the east on this model than what the European model had, and we're starting to see that cold air start to dip into parts of the eastern United States. Let's play this through a little bit more. Here would be by the 25th, and here's the 26th, when the GFS model wants to really progress this cold front and this very cold air mass. Now, this is happening about 2 to 3 days later than what the European model is showing, so we have to take this with a grain of salt. We have two different contrasting models, and we have two different times for when this cold air will arrive in the eastern United States. Now, here would be by the 27th, the 28th, and the 29th, and something that I've noticed is that the GFS model is a little bit more hesitant to show that cold air for parts of the south central, southeast, and pretty much all the way up the east coast. It is a little bit more hesitant to show that, just because it shows that ridging, instead of being over the North Atlantic, it actually shows it over parts of the southwestern Atlantic. So that'll kind of hold off some of the cold air if that were to be true. That's going to be something that we also have to pay attention to. And also on the GFS model, you don't see too much ridging throughout parts of the western United States. So you really don't see that over the western United States, and that's going to be important. If you don't have ridging, you're really going to see a very fast moving pattern, and you could see a lot of troughs come out, and then you see ridging quickly replace it, and then you see more troughs come in. So we have two different contrasting patterns, and we'll have to really decipher through them. Here would be by the 30th, and here's the 31st. We're looking at that cold air now arrived over parts of the eastern United States. Here would be by the 1st of November, and then here would be the climate Prediction Center's outlook from the 22nd to the 26th. Cold air for portions of the northern United States, especially areas that are, I would say, west of the Great Lakes. That's where you have the best chance of seeing that cold air within the 6 to 10 day time frame. Here is the 8 14 day time frame from the 24th to the 30th of October. We're looking at that cold air a little bit further to the east, but it is still pushed a little bit further to the west. It's still west of the East Coast, but it is still arriving over the eastern half of the U.S., if that makes sense. So we are going to start to see this pattern set up over the next 2 or 3 weeks, and it looks like it could actually prolong for maybe another 2 or 3 weeks before exiting. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.